let's get a bit deep dive on our global search. So Nova has this global search here on the top left that we briefly passed by it on the previous tutorials. So you can search anything here on any resource that you configure to use global search. So just as a quick refresh, if we go here to user, you have this title, that's what appears on the search results or any type of foreign key that we want to put on another relationship. And then here it says what columns can you search for the global search. So if I go back here and for instance on the users, I do have this Gregoria, and I'm seeing on my resource that I have this name and email to search for. So whatever I put here, Gregoria, where it actually finds it, or I put this email arc, it also searches for Gregoria. Then you can click on it and the resource appears here in the detail view, right? So what happens if, for instance, you want to do a search, but there is no column on your Eloquent model? So let me give an example. You have the orders, as you know, but the orders doesn't have any description, doesn't have anything, right? You just have this user ID and then this total, and this user ID, as you know, is a foreign key to the table user, so there is a relationship on the Eloquent models here. So we can go here and I can go to the orders on Nova on my resource. So I go here to order and I say, okay, let's search for instance for total. So let's use the column total to search for something, and then let's just show the ID that we have, because there's nothing else. There's a user ID that you can see, so we can even put user ID for instance. And if I search for 6135, I will get the 24 and the 93. So if I go here and search for 6135, I get the 94, the 93 and the 24. So of course if I click it, then I go to the order that is connected to it. But I want to see this user directly here on the global search. If I search for 6135, I want to see something like order from Jordan with total of something. So how can we do this when we don't have a column? So we use the Eloquent appends. We create a column, the dynamic column. And how this is done? If you go to Laravel docs and you go here and you search for append, and here it says append values to JSON. It's not only to JSON, it's actually to your array, like it says here. So as you can see, it says occasionally when casting models to an array, you may wish to add attributes that do not correspond to a column on your database. So to do this, first you define the assessor, and then you do the column, you add that column to your appends, and this will automatically add that new column label, this new attribute, to all of your Eloquent results from this Eloquent model. So this is what we need to do, and this is what we're going to do here as an example. So this is very useful to customize the global search in a very good way, and in a way that it's not only about the results that you have on your Eloquent attributes, but something else that you want to create here, and always given by the keys that you use here on the search, right? So let's now create that. Let's go here to our order, and I'm just going to do first the protected appends, and then I'm going to create here like a column, I don't know, called like order description. So we're going to give kind of a human label here, like saying order number from John Daniel of value Z. So for that, then after creating the column that will be appended, so it's a customized column, it's a calculated column, you need to do the assessor for that column. So you create public function, and then you just do the normal assessor as on your Eloquent models. You do get, and then the camel case description, and then attribute. And here is where you do the computation. So return, so I want to return the name order. So it's an order, right? Order, number, and then you can just put the number of the order, like the ID of the order, this ID. And then you say from, and here you say this, and then you access the username from this Eloquent model instance, right? And then you can even put like, you know, in parentheses, the just the price, the total, yeah, just as an example. So this gives total flexibility on what? So total flexibility on creating this column for you. So order number with the ID from the username, and then in parentheses the total. Oh, sorry, mistake here. The total of the order itself. So let's see how it works now. You go back to order, and you say, okay, I don't want anymore to show the title user ID. I want to show the new column called order description. And of course you can still search for the total. Okay, that's what we are going to do exactly on this example. And guess what? Here we go. So we do 6135, and as you can see, you now have the order from we now have the calculated column, and this is very, very useful in case you want to show data to your client projects that is not totally related with the normal native Eloquent columns that you have on your native Eloquent attributes that you have. Okay, hope it helps. Thank you. So let's move forward, discovering Laravel Nova, and on this tutorial we're going to learn how to compile the Nova assets. So as you remember, we copied the Nova files here into this folder, and we need to find a way to, when we do changes directly on the framework resources, we need to understand how we can recompile that and export that back to our public folder, right? So when we put things here, all the folder and files of Nova, this is pretty much a Laravel project, as you can see. So the folder structure is more or less the same. And you have some files here that you don't need to pay attention so much about. This Babel RC, ESLint is about, indentation and code intelligence there. That doesn't matter for now, but especially this last Webpack matters. So as you can see, it is named as .dist. So all you have to do is to remember it back to webpack.mix.js, and from here you can now install your node models, node package management install, right? So you just need to run it there inside the Nova folder, don't forget that. So let's give it a try here and wait a bit until it installs. Okay, moving forward, and it's done. So it installed the node models. So now if you go here to the Nova folder, mastering Nova course, Nova, you'll see that I have these node modules that is here, right? So from here we can have the minimal environment to compile our assets. So let's open this webpack.mix.js and see what's going on here. So basically we compile the JavaScript that we have on our app.js here on our resources. So it compiles to this public folder that is here, right? And then does the extract of those modules, and then set the public path to public, runs the Tailwind post CSS to basically recompile the CSS from Tailwind and any custom CSS that you can have placed there. Then the copies from the public folder that is here to a new folder that's going to be created called Nova app public vendor Nova, and then finally uses this configuration of the app pack and version any type of JavaScript file or CSS file that it can version. So it's very simple, it's very straightforward. What counts is this copy. So basically it will create here a Nova app with the new assets compiled. So just as an exercise, I'm just using here our Laravel Nova that we used to see on the other tutorials, and what we are going to do is we are going to correct this text area that you see here. So this text area should have finished here along the other fields, but actually it goes until the end, and it's a bug that's here for quite a long time and it's still not corrected. I'm sure it's going to be pretty soon. Still, we are going just to align it here with the fields for this text area that is here. So we will need to recompile the resources, the view components, and especially the view component that goes here on this description. So let's see how we do that, and let's see what comes here. So first of all, when we go back here, of course you have npm run dev. So let's just run it and see what happens. Okay, it's good. It's building the modules, parsing everything that is the view components, as you can see. And something is starting to happen. You're going to see here on that folder that is called Nova app, right? So here it is, Nova app public. and then the vendor, and then Nova. It's exactly the same as you have here, vendor and Nova. So at the end, what we need to do is just to copy paste this vendor to this place here, and then it's done. Okay, so you can of course remove the public, the Nova app, and put it directly on the public. And normally it's not a good practice, since something can go wrong or something that you want not to be overridden. But still, you also have here the compilation results that we can work on. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this one from this public that is here, that has this vendor and stuff, and I'm going to put it, actually this one vendor, and I'm going to paste it here. And it is basic what you need to do, and it copy pastes everything. Of course now it's the same. So let's see how we can correct this part here about this text area. So how can you actually work in a way that you know, you correct and then you republish again everything. So let me go here to this turning on the development tools. So we are going to do a pretty investigation, meaning it's like you should do, or at least how I do, to understand what's going on. So first of all, I come here and I see that there is a Tailwind, there are Tailwind classes being applied here. So this Tailwind classes, it applies a width for fifth. And if I go to the other one, that is here, it applies a width 1/2, right? So it means that if I come here back to this one, and instead of 4/5 I apply a 1/2, we might get what we need. There we go. So basically there is kind of a mistake here, or something is basically putting these as a full width and not as a 4/5. So let's search here on our Nova, find and replace, actually just find for that 4/5 to see if it appears something. And here we go. We have two places. We have this app.js that for now we don't need to do anything, because it's basically the real compilation in terms of JavaScript for the field classes. But we do have here on this view, we do have these field classes and then this full width content, right? So it's a property from the view component, and it comes on this default field. So any field really uses this default field that is here, and if there is a property for the full width content, then it goes to this 1/2 in case it's false, or this, and then it verifies if it can be stacked, meaning you can have different fields on the same zone, on the same group, and then it applies with full or 4/5. So there is kind of a situation here with this full width content, right? So if you go now to the resources, components, to the text area, there must be something there about these. So normally it's in this case it's the kebab attribute. So full, it's there, full width content on top. So it says true. So because it says true, what happens is it will fill in the stacked, and then there is another property on the stack that is putting him as false, and then is rendering this W4/5 on the property of the parent of the class of the field. That's why you have this default field, and then a template, and then the text area itself that is generated. Now this default field is creating those classes given this property that is here. So what we need to do basically is pass this to false, and hopefully it will not load anymore this field stacked, but will immediately load the width half. So now we need to recompile, right? This is the part of this tutorial scope. So how do we recompile? Well, very simple. We do again a PHP npm run dev, just in this case without compressing the JavaScript and the CSS files, just a normal one for us to see. And we do exactly the same exercise as we did before. So let it go until the end. Okay, done. And it goes again to this Nova app, right? So I'm going to copy this vendor back here, past. Again, this is really step by step. So again, you can change that to go directly to the public when the results of your compilation. And if I go back to products, and no, I don't see it there. So let me just check. Let me just copy it again. So it's from here, vendor, copy, paste, Okay, I didn't do a control F5 refresh, so maybe it has the resources still cached. So let's check it again. And here we go. So as you can see, now we have it limited here because of that property. So as you can see, we learned how to open the resource compilations with the Webpack. We learned how to compile, and we just corrected one of the view components about this text area. Now remember that when you download a new version of Nova, okay, and you publish again the assets, everything gets overridden again. So this is where it comes the situation where sometimes it's better to extend the field to your own field and not using the default fields while some situations are still not corrected, okay? Or you need to empower that field with more attributes or with other type of behaviors that you want it to have. And that's exactly what you're going to see on the next tutorials about deep diving a bit on the field before we close down this chapter. So hope you enjoyed. See you again on the next one. Thanks. One of the nice things that we have at Nova is the capacity to pass data from your server to your client, in this case to your client components. And in this tutorial, we're going to see how we can actually change, for instance, the background of a field. So by default, you don't have that property available on your fields, meaning that if I go to users, for instance, and I edit this one here, this name, and I now go here to my app, Nova user, I do have this text here, but I cannot do something like, background color, and then just pass like my background color, just like this. So if you do this, and then you do an F5, it gives an error. So let's start by resolving this error and by applying the method background color. So if I go here to the field, in this case, this one here, the text, I can just write down here, and in this case we are changing the default text field from Nova. So if you update the code, you'll lose this. Later on we are going to see how we can create our own text fields or view components on the next lesson. But in this case, I'm just going to do public function background controller, just creating the method and the color itself, and just return the same object, and at least it should not give an error. Yeah, here you go. But we're not doing anything with it, right? We're not passing the color to the view component. So to do this, you do have on Nova what is called the meta. So as you can see, it is as HTML as an example here. You can apply metadata that is passed from your server to your view component. So in this case, the background color. And since I'm going to affect the style of the object itself, not a Tailwind CSS class, I should write style, not the style itself, sorry, the name of the style is the background color, and then just the color itself. This is what I want to pass, and I want to affect the style of the object, right? So in this case, this meta background color, and then I want to pass the full style that I want to apply. So this is with meta, you can pass any attribute that you want to be passed as data to your client. And this is what we're going to see very quickly here when we are working on this form, for instance, and now we have this background color. If I check the update here, this call, you can see here on the response for the field attribute name, now there is the background color. See? So any meta that you pass is passed on these attributes as view props to your view components. So how do we use now this background color to affect the object itself, the view component itself? Well, first we need to locate that here on Nova, resources, views, not views, sorry. Nova, resources, GS, components, form. And then we have here the text, and the text, as you can see, there is already some default attributes that it goes on all of them. We are not going to put here default attribute for the background color, although we could put it, you could just write background color, and then, this dot field, and then background color in case it exists, or and then a color that you would like to apply there, background color, sorry, and then like a specific code that you want to have in case there is no background color, right? But we're not going to do this. We're just going to actually pass it straight away. And to do this, we just apply property, and we just call it field dot background color. And because we are passing the full style background color, we just apply it to the style, and that's it. So save it, and now of course you need to recompile it. Actually, I already have the npm watch turned on. It's just recompiling again and copying everything. So if it works well, we should see something changing here at the background of the field. There you go. So now, as you can see, you can affect the backgrounds of the field the way you want. So just to give a final example before we close the tutorial, like for instance, if I pass here the other text, but I say, I don't know, A14511, if I go here and I do an F5, I should see another color. There you go, on another one. So as you can see, this is the way we pass data from the server to the client. To our view components is using the with meta, okay? And then you can use that with meta on your props with the field dot and then the name of the attribute, that of the metadata that you're passing, okay? So thank you, and again on the next tutorial we're going to see how we can actually create a custom field and have more flexibility on all of these properties. On the previous tutorial, we saw how to pass data from server to the client. In this one, we're going to create our first advanced UI component. We're going to create a field that will have a small font awesome on the left and the text on the right. So we're going to do something like this. If you go here to the edit, you have the field here, and then we are going to put the font awesome icon on the left that is configurable by us. Okay, so it's the first time we're going to create a UI component. Bear with me, it's very funny and it's pretty straightforward. So first of all, what we need to do is to call the PHP artisan Nova field to create the field, and then just pass your name here as a composer nomenclature or syntax. In this case, my username, and then let's call it text FA. Text FA. It's good. So now we just follow the three questions it's going to ask you. So would you like to install the field npm? You say yes. It's better to say yes to everything unless you say what you're doing. So just bear a moment with me here for it to install the node model dependencies. Almost there. And then it's going to ask you if you want to do a first compilation of your component. We are going to say yes to. Here we go. And finally, if we want to update the composer.json file, we also say yes. Then you wait a bit longer just to finalize it, and that's do the first dump auto load with this component also installed. Okay, generate optimize auto load files. Good, everything perfect. As you can see here, we got this Bruno C Falcon /textfa. And it means we now have our library already on our Composer repositories. So if you go here to composer.json, you see that Nova adds these Nova components text.fa and also your Composer library text -fa. So it's created on these Nova components, so everything is done automatically text.fa. And then here you have your own Composer file and also your own Webpack. So you can immediately start to go to Nova Components, text.fa, and do an npm run watch. So each time we do something on our JavaScript or on our template, on our view template there, or view component template, we are going to see the changes immediately on the Laravel Nova. So the next thing we need to see here is what happened to our package.json. So here you also have this build text.fa and build text.fa prod in case you just want to call directly from your project root. But normally I advise to do it directly from your components follow to run it there. Okay, So good, we now have our component. If you go to Nova Components, again, we have this folder here. So what is inside this folder is three things: a dist folder, a resources folder, and a source. So source is basically the PHP class called TextFA that we are going to use. So it's now called TextFA, the name of the component that is passed everywhere on the client side. So we can differentiate from what type of view component we want to render on the screen, on the forms, index, and on the detail views. Second, we do have this field service provider where you can see that it loads a script and the style. We're not going to change the style for now, but the scripts, the JavaScript view components, we're going to change them. So we have one for detail, one for the form, one for the index, and everything is booted automatically by Nova with these component names that are here. And as you can see, it already scaffolds, let's say, so the default field. In this case, just a field that if you run, it's exactly the same field, but in this case, our FA field that we are going to use, so our text FA on this case. So let's start by change that. Let's go to Nova, to our user, and call it, instead of text, we're going to say FA text. And I'm just going to an F5. It's text FA, sorry, text FA, and it's important the namespace. So if we go back here to users, and don't forget that now we have this npm run watch on the component. So for now, this text FA doesn't show anything here, which is a bit strange, because if I go to text FA, it extends the field. And on the form, vmodel values. Let me see it again. 5. This is the index. Sorry, the index. Span field value. Exactly. I don't have 5, and it was there. Sorry, something happened. So as you can see here, we do have the span that is being run, right? So in the index field, it runs this the index component that is here, the index context that is here. So for instance, if I now click on the name, here, you're going to see that it shows that span, and then there is a class that is applied. So if you go here and you pass your own class, it gets appended there. So for instance, text 70, just to give it a bit of opacity, 70 by default on the class that is made for Nova. You see that it changes. See, so everything now is changed, and these are going to do, but not on the index, but actually on the form. So if we go back here to the form, we also see our input, and this is where we're going to work on. Okay, so to work on that, we are going to basically create, first of all, load our Font Awesome kit. And to do that, if I go here to my Font Awesome kit, I can just click here. Yeah, exactly. And then copy git code. And a quick way to load our JavaScript file is instead of I'm going to see how to do that dynamically on the next tutorials. But just go to resources, views, vendor, Nova, and there is a meta here that is loaded. Actually, I already have it here on a previous test I did. So you have this. You just need to load this script here, and on that case, when you load it and you do an F5. You see on the network that Font Awesome comes here. So this free.min, see, kit.fontawesome. So it's already being loaded on the page. And if you do a view source, you're also going to see it somewhere. Yeah, it's here. See, Font Awesome. So now that you are loading the Font Awesome, we can actually use it to load something. In this case, to show the icon, right, that we just talked about. And actually, I think the Nova already brings the Font Awesome by default. Let me search FA space. Yeah, it already has the Font Awesome, so we don't need to load it actually. So let me just remove it here from the meta and see if it works. Okay, if it doesn't work, we put it again. So no worries at all. So how do we do now here the change on our, so this is our input, right, that we have here. So we just apply a bit of Tailwind here. Let's start by putting a div here. So we're going to do a flex to put both icons side by side, the icon and the text input itself. So class equals to flex. And we're going to put one div and another div. So one for the icon and another one for input. So let me just copy paste this text here. And I don't want the class of the field to be applied only to the field, right? Because just for you to see what's going to happen now here, and just putting item center so I don't forget. Let's see what happens now. How does it show? It actually shows the item and then the full. Let me just yeah, here it is, the one, and then a text, right? So this is very strange. So what we're going to do is we're going to put all of these classes on our main div, and these might show a bit better. So again, don't forget that we have the npm watch, so it's always refreshing our code as soon as you see changes on the client side. And as you can see, it already starts to show something that we want to go on that direction, right? We have the div here, we have another div for the input, and what we need now to do is to make it live with the icon that we want. So we want an icon. In this case, just we do it the normal way. And then first of all, we hard coded it to see it working, and then we change it to the view property. So let's say FA user. I think there is an FA user, and let's see how it looks like. It doesn't look because it's still compiling on the back, I guess, or maybe not. Yeah, maybe not because there is no FA user. So let me get another one that we saw here. So FA image. So in this case, FA image. Do an F5. No, it's still not working well. And let's see the code. So div. Okay. Class FA image, and then ends the div. Let me see if it actually rendering the div there. So it's a good one for us to see how things work. And yeah, the div is there. So FA image. So it's not actually loading the library. No problem at all. So let's just load it. The font awesome again here. Copy. And we call the solid one. I know for sure this one exists. FA user. So let's do test. And here we go. Good. Now let's give it a bit of a padding. Class PR3. Yeah, good. So good one. So the icon and the text exactly as we want. And we now need to make it dynamic. And in this case, we are going to do two things. First of all, we just want this div in case there is actually an icon to show. Well, to do that, just use the normal directive if, and then we call it icon. We're going to call it icon. So let's already call it icon there. So let me do a locate. It's faster. And here on the text, we are just going to pass here public function icon. On this case, so what we're going to do is, as we learned on the previous tutorials, we are going to pass a metadata here. So we say, what is the icon? And then we do a return. And you just return with the normal meta. The icon itself. So this is the field.icon that you're going to get on the client side. And the icon itself. So you just pass a solid icon all the time. It's just again for the tutorial, for the sake of the tutorial. So we have an icon now. And here on our form, we are going to actually only show this div if there is an icon. And how do we select the icon here? So we don't put FAS because we're already passing that. And you just need to do a field.icon, right? So this is it starts to come from the data of the field. Now comes a new metadata property called icon. And if we go now here, we just write icon FA user. Well, let's put another one because the users, then it doesn't show the difference, right? So icons, let's put another one that you want to pass. I don't know, font awesome, free. Let's put address book. So address book. Here we go. Let's see if it works. If not, we need to debug it. No. So the it's because it might not be FAS address book. Let's check it out. FAS FA address book. So FA address book. Icon FAS. Very good. Class field.icon. So it should work. Okay, if it's not working, let's debug it again. So it looks like this is a very nice debugging session that we need to do. So we have the PR3. Of course, I'm not binding it. So a normal mistake when we are coding on Vue. So you need to bind the class to the variable, to the data variable that you want to use. So here we go. There you go. So a simple address that you can put on. Again, let's say, for instance, that you have an address on one and you want to pass another type on another one. So, for instance, on the email, you use again our new one, and you just need to run it down here to an icon called FA. Let's say the email. I think there is an email, right? Yeah, envelope. So there is a solid envelope, so that's the one we're going to use. You can even do it better. You can actually write FAS, and you don't need to pass these, right? You just pass the type of the font awesome icon that you want. And now we have the email. Let's see what happens now in email. Here we go. So the Bruno just disappeared because we didn't pass here the address book. So in this case, FA user, and then we do it, the real good tutorial with both of them. So as you can see, now I have the name and you have the email. And this is a new text field that was created in 15 minutes. So have fun with it, create as much text fields as you want. And on the next tutorials, we're going to deep dive a bit more to customize it even better. Okay, thanks. One cool hidden gem on Laravel Nova is the way you can sort your sidebar resources. So as you can see, we have these devices, orders, products, reviews, tags, users. Then the way they are sorted here is basically the way those resources are loaded. So here on the app Nova, when you have the resource device or the product, it also actually passes by the devices or the product the same way. So it up, down, top, bottom approach exactly in the same way that are ordered on the directory. So what happens if we want to actually have them, I don't know, completely in reverse, like users on top, then tags and reviews, products, orders, and devices in the bottom. So to do that, Nova has I think it's still undocumented at the moment I'm writing this tutorial, recording this tutorial, sorry. There is a way that you can load something on your Nova service provider, and that's what I'm going to do here. And then you pass an integer, in this case on your public static attribute integer that will prioritize the sort order. And you pass that on the resources that you want to prioritize. So we're going to do it right now here. And to do that, you need to use a static method called sort resources by. So you go to, for instance, to your Nova service provider, and you just do exactly like this: Nova sort resources by, and then resource, and you do return resource, the resource that is passed on the argument. And then let's use, for instance, one, let's say priority. That's the one that comes actually on the Nova pull request. And here, in case there's nothing, you just put it on the bottom. So you just put it 9999. So what happened now is Nova will look for this static priority attribute on your resource, and if it exists, it will use it to sort your resources. So let's go back here to my sidebar. So let's start by the users and give priority 10. So I go to users, and I just do public static priority 10. And from here, I'm just going to copy paste to the next one, tags and then reviews. So tag will be 20, and then review will be 30, and then products, orders, device. I guess so. Products 40, order. Actually, I just need to go bottom up, right? And then device. Exactly. So again, user 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60. Good. So now we have these 6 resources that are here. And when I do an F5, I'm going to refresh the screen. It should revert the order. That's it. So very quick tutorial, but it's very effective. It's a way to basically sort the sidebar. It was a very requested feature to the Nova team, and it's available since the version 3, so you can just use like this and then sort the resources as you want. So let's deep dive more on Laravel Nova now that we finished the first chapter, and understand some resource management patterns that you can have. And this is basically useful for you since when you start having common functionalities on your resources, you don't want to replicate those functionalities over your resource and that resource and this resource, right? Over all the resources, you want to have that. Let's say, for instance, you want to have a card, and that card you want to share it by orders and products, and you don't want, to put the card on one and not on the other, or having to put, in case you have to both have the same card, you then need to start managing, both cards on all of these functionalities. And logically, if you have 4 or 5 resources, as you can see here on the left, this might not be a problem, but when you come to more complex projects, you will see that it's important to aggregate certain functionalities on specific resource grouping. So what we are going to do is we're going to see where we can actually leverage some benefits from having a kind of an abstract resource that your other child resources will inherit from that abstract resource. And you can even have abstract resources per context that you need on your Laravel Nova application, or business context on this case, if that's the case. So I'm going to show you an example, and then with the example you can extrapolate other type of scenarios that it might be useful for you. So in this case, I just for the sake of the exercise, I just installed these Nova HTML cards just to do some tests on the cards, and you're going to see what I mean. And now what we're going to do is to create an abstract resource. So let me go here and open a new window, Mastering Nova course, and then PHP Artisan Nova resource. And let's call it, in this case, it's the real abstract resource, it's the parent one. So I'm just put abstract resource. And I'm going to create another one that I call it like, for instance, total counts resource. And you're going to see what does this mean. So I'm going to now go here to my app Nova, and you see these have this abstract resource, and you have this total counts resource, right? So this is where we're going to work, and the total counts resource is a parent what I'm going to do of order and products, just to show, for instance, how we can actually use the counts card, a card that we're going to create here on the fly, on both of them, so you don't have to replicate code on both, on each of them. And the abstract resource, what we're going to do is going to use a functionality that is going to be shared by all of the resources that are here. Okay, so all of them are going to inherit this one, and then we're going to use a index query functionality that you see is going to be shared by all of them. So again, it's going to show to you the advantages of using abstract resources. And these abstract resources, they don't have a specific model or a title or a search or wherever. They just basically extend from resources, and then you extend it from this abstract resource. Okay, so for instance, let's say the total counts resource is exactly the same, but we are going to use specifically information on this case for the cards and for the filters and lenses and actions. I'm going to leave this 4 here. And this is going to extend the abstract resource, and the abstract resource will extend the resource itself. And this one for now, I'm going to actually take everything out from it, and then we're going to see what we are going to do here. Okay, so now on the order, instead of extending from resource, I'm going to extend it from the total counts resource. And what happens now is that order extends from this one, that is the parent, and this one extends from the abstract resource, and abstract resource from the resource itself. So because we are using class inheritance, at the end it will, actually I'm going to declare it as an abstract class on this case. So if you go here, they will, as I was saying, sorry, the class inheritance allows us to, of course, use these kind of models, and at the end our order, it will still have all the attributes and methods that we want to use. So if now I click on orders, everything should be fine, and actually it's not. So it says class absolutely contains 100 and must therefore be declared abstract. Yeah, it's correct. So total counts is also an abstract total counts resource. And here we go. So everything works like before, right? Because we are using abstract classes on this case. And even for the total counts resource, as you can see, it's just a partial class in terms of the methods, because at the end, they all inherit from the main parent one, that is the Nova resource itself, that has all the methods and attributes that then on the order we are replicating them and using them, right? So let's say now that on the order and on the products, they are going to inherit from the total counts resource. So I'm going here and I just put it here, so total counts resource, and then I don't need to have these cards. This is where I'm going to do the test here. So I'm going to remove this one. I'm going to show to you the advantage. And the order, I'm also going to remove the cards. So I want to have a card that's going to be common to both of them, or at least a set of cards. We're just going to do the test with one, so you get the picture. So here on the cards, now I'm going to use this HTML card that is just, it's just a simple, it's very powerful. It creates a Nova HTML card. You can do whatever you want here. And I'm just going to copy paste this text here to the card. And I'm not going to use 3 cards. I'm just going to use 1 card. It's just the test. New HTML card. So I'm going to inherit the class namespace. 1/3, it's fine. And here, hello world. What I'm going to do is basically I want to show the total count of that specific resource. It's just to give an example about how dynamic this can be. And here for that, since we already are in the resource class, I'm going to use I'm going to get the model itself. So I'm going to use a static model. Static get model. There is a method called get model on the static that actually on the static class there is a resource that will get you the model instance that you're working on for this. Why is he giving me an error? Sorry, because I'm inside the return, right? So I'm just going to put it out. And from here, then we can do some things. So I'm going to put like total. And then instead of, I want to get the name of the resource itself. To get the name, you also use the static label, as you know, right? So this is already, if you go here to order and label, it's something that you already have. Actually, the label is generated dynamically that you can override on your resource. We're not doing that here because we're just using the normal Nova platform to generate the labels. But there is a method called label, a static method called label. So total, and then it shows the plural, the label. The other one is singular label, just for you to know. But for now, we just keep the label one. And like this. And then I'm going to put here the count of that resource itself, of that model class that we have. So I'm just going to put dot static label. Wait, yeah, it's giving me an error here. So I'm going to put model count, right? That's what we need. Just a count. So that model does a count. It's an eloquent model. You call the method count, it gives you the total count for that model. So when we do this, if I'm using now the abstract total count, any resource that will inherit from this total counts resource will automatically have that card on. So if you go here to, remember, we have the order total counts and the product also total counts. So let us see if this works well. So I go back here and I click on the orders. I should be something floating on the top, a card. See, total orders 144, products, total products 78. See, with a single line of the abstraction on the parent resource, we get this. So as you can see, 144, so it's correct. It's a perfect scenario that you can use abstract resources to manage and to contextualize and to group information or business context that you want. Now, what can we do in terms of this abstract resource? So we saw the fact that the abstract, everything inherits from this, right? So for instance, I have the order and the product now, but I can also get the review extends abstract resource in case there's nothing else to extend from. I can have a tag also extends abstract resource. And I don't know, a user also abstract resource. And what we are going to do is something simple. Well, it's not so simple, but I'm going to show it step by step how you can do. So as you can see here, when we click on any resource, Nova by default orders the ID with the desk, with the descending. Okay. So it always gives you the last model instance that was recorded on the database with the highest ID. So it's basically the last insertion on that table for that products one. And what happens if you want to have another type of ordering? This is very, very common on Laravel Nova projects. You don't want to use the ID, but when you go to the resource, for instance, on the orders, you want to have the total. I don't want to have the ID, but I want to have the total. Of course, you can put it sortable on the total, and from there on, you will have the, these arrows up and down, and you can, of course, do it manually. But maybe your client is going to say, yeah, when I go to this resource view, I do want to see, another type of ordering here. I don't want to see this order. So to do that, we then need to create something on top on this abstract resource that allows you to, override some index queries if it's necessary. And then in that case, just apply a logic for that. So that's exactly what we're going to do. I'm going to do public static function index query. So this is basically the query that is loaded for this index view that you see here. And you just pass the signature just like this. Sorry. Yes, done. These are on the Nova documentation. I have this, so there's nothing new that I'm putting here. And you can just override this. So if you override it somehow and you return the same query, nothing happens at this moment. So if I click on products or orders, see, nothing happens. But let's just generate here a where is active false to see if something happens. In case there is a column called is active. Yeah, so less stuff is shown here. On the products, there was also in active. All of them is active false. So as you can see, we are affecting, let's say, the resource itself. I push true, I should see greens everywhere. See? So we are affecting the index query there. Of course, the index query is good for this kind of situations, but in terms of permissions, is not good at all. We're going to see that on another video. So for now, here, what we need to do is, okay, I want to select I want to be able to somehow configure an index query that is a bit more general. I want to say, for instance, I go here to my order and I want to put something like public static index default. Like, what is your default order? And I say my default order is going to be, I want the total and I want it ordered by descending. Okay, and now I want to apply this index query that loads this index default order, and then each time you have a resource that has this static attribute, it will load it on the index query. And in case you do have already selected something here, then it will override your default index, your default or sorting order that you selected. So to do that, first of all, we need to retrieve the URI key of this resource. So you just need to do a static, and there is a method, a static method called URI key. Sorry. So get it. So in this case, you're getting, products or orders, whatever, because that's what you're going to use, because that's what's coming on the request. So just to show you something very quickly, if you do an info request, you see exactly this kind of information that is used on index query. I'm just going to load it here for us to see very quickly. I'm going to come back here and go to orders, for instance, and maybe not orders. So info request, abstract requests, extends resource. Let me just go back. Order total counts resource index. We have an index query that is overwriting. Okay, so let me take it. We need to take it out. So I'm going to go again. Orders. Column not found is okay. So there is no. In this case, it doesn't work because there is no column. Let's go to products. Product, it exists because we now see the result here, right? We have this is active here, and if we go here, well, forget about the error that we got here, but let's go to the end. You see, it applies. So there is always two queries that it does on the index query. One to actually present the results, and then another one to do a count. So as you can see, the global search is not being used. The order by on the first one is not being used because we are just making a default. But by default, it will actually do something by default, and this is where you need to deep dive more, and that's why I'm here to help you on this. So basically what we're going to do is to see how is this order given by, because you don't see anything here, right? If I go back here to the code, to the Laravel log, it doesn't say order by ID descending, right? So that because this request comes with the one that you selected. So for instance, again, if I go back to here and I click just for you to see, if I now act on the sorting, I will see that on the Laravel log. See, order by ID, order direction ask. Okay, I'm going to clean it again. If I click it again, it's going to say the desk. Now what happens if I don't have anything? So if you don't have anything, it says null, it is order by ID, but there is no order by, as you saw before, the order by selection. So where does it come actually is order then? So this order comes from the optional, in this case, you get the query and then you get the orders array inside it. So you go to the query and then you get the query instance and then use the orders. And this is where actually it will come. So we're going to see it again. I'm going to do an F5. So no default there. And here it's where it comes. Order by products ID desk. This is a real eloquent query builder that is being used. Nova will use this products ID in this desk. So we need actually to clean this up when we are doing in a couple of minutes our parameterization, our configuration about our index default ordering. So just for you to see that sometimes on Nova you might see something and then you don't understand why it's still having another behavior. It's because we also need to look somewhere else, and it might make sense or not. That's a decision that it's not up to me to decide, but it's just to show to you where you need to look for information when you start to go to a more advanced level like this one. So again, getting back to our objective, we want to still do an index query that is useful for us. Like, so we have now the URI key, and of course, now that we know the order by direction, we just need to do if that. Let's do an optional because the request sometimes comes empty. In this case, so not the request, is order by direction. So if we do have an order by direction that is null, means you just need to return the query itself. So basically there is nothing to order by because it's the default one, right? If still we do have our index default order that we just created now, right? If it's not empty, so this is where actually we come back to this index default order that you have here on the order, right? So, and then we now say that that object, that array that you just saw on the get query, Eloquent Builder orders, needs to be empty, because then it will actually filter by what you just saw, right, on the Laravel log. So we don't want that, but we want to return the same query ordered by this Eloquent Builder, nothing really specific here. And now we need to give both. We need to give the total and then the desk. So how do you achieve that? Well, there is several ways you can do this, but you just get the key of the array, and then you get the first element, the value of the array of the first key. You can do it on this way, and basically you just pass the static here. So let me again copy this part here and here, and that's it. So this is going to return the key and the value of the index default order in case it exists, and if everything goes well, we now have something to see on the order. So order, I place the total desk. So if I go to orders, there you go, total. See, it's organized descending, and now if I click on the ID, it overrides the total that I have there. And this is a very nice way to guarantee that you can have your default, as you can see again. So there is no default here, and then it automatically picks up what we have. And of course you can select wherever you want here, except some relationships. And this will go again to another tutorial. What happens if I want to order by Kenton, or I want to search by Kenton? As you can see here, if I put Kenton, nothing appears when you see Kenton there, right? So this is again on another tutorial that we're going to see how to resolve this. But again, this one shows you how you actually can use resources to then use those ones for whatever you want. So in this case, for instance, I use the order product counts, I don't know, let's say user. So for instance, if I click on the user, I have emails, right? So I can also go here just as to close this tutorial. So I go back to user and I add it here, and I say, okay, now I want my default order to be the email and the sending. And now when I click on users, or when I actually refresh the screen, I have them organized and with the same logic. So because we are inheriting from this abstract resource, all the resources will gain this functionality about the index query. Again, it's just to give an example how you can actually leverage this pattern on your own business needs and for your clients and for the dashboards and the resources management you're developing. Okay, hope you enjoyed it, and see you again on the next tutorial. Bye-bye. So all the resources you see here on the left, they're loaded from this app Nova folder, right, as we saw. So what happens if we do have a resource, but the resource doesn't come from this Nova folder? So if you have a package, for instance, or if you have, at a place, at a path that you have to do it, you want to organize your resources. So let's give an example. I'm just going to create here a folder called business. Let's move this order to that business one. So Nova, no, in this case business. And here I'm just going to give it a namespace. So what happens is this orders disappears, because Nova is looking for all the resources inside the Nova folder. So to also tell him to look outside of the Nova folder, or in this case to also direct Nova to that resource, we need to override the method on our Nova service provider. So if you go to Nova service provider, you just need to override the method called resources on this case. So let me just show to you. So you do protected function resources, and first you need to tell Nova that it still needs to load the resources from the app path, in this case directory Nova. So we just do it like this: resources in, use the method, static method called resources in, and then you pass the folder where those resources are. And the second, you use the static method called resources, and here you can pass any type of resources that you want. So let me just pass the order, and in this case the resource order, besides this one. So let me just comment this line here so you can see what happens. In this case, Nova just loads the order on the left. See, orders here. And in this case, because if we are not saying the resources in, we're not using to tell him to also load that it actually does by default, he was not loading them, but now it is. So very simple. With this option you can load resources that are not located on the folder, the Nova folder on this case. Continuing on the abstract resources, let's do something that is going to be very useful for you as an added value on your resources, flexibility to show columns on the index view. So for instance, imagine that you have a way to have a filter here where you select the columns that you want them to be shown or not. So on this case, for instance, you have a filter here that will appear columns saying, for instance, ID and review, or ID review and reviewable, and then you check them active or inactive so they get hidden or shown on your index view. Also, to do that, we are going to use the two resources that we have here that are using the abstract resource. So in this case is the user, as you can see, abstract resource, and the review also using the abstract resource. So to do that, first we need to create a filter. So let me open here a command prompt. Very quickly going to my Mastering Nova course. And now we just need to do PHP artisan Nova filter, fields filter boolean. So we are creating a filter of type boolean, and Nova creates them here on the filters as we already saw, and now I have this new fields filter. Now, as you know, the fields filter already have this apply and these options method as we saw on previous tutorials. But they also have other things that you can, other methods that you can use on the fields filter that is also useful for you to know. Sometimes this information doesn't come completely documented on the Nova documentation, unfortunately. That's why I'm here to also make you aware about it. So for instance, we also have a public function default. And default is one that is going to show to you how the behavior of the, let's say, the Boolean values on the filter should appear, and we are not going to do anything for now with this. Basically, we will see it right after when we start putting more things here. Also, we have on the abstract resource a way to select the fields that we want to put on our index, and I'm going to show this to you. So for instance, let's go to the review, and when there is that method is not applies on our resource, Nova uses the fields method. But the nice thing is that you have also fields for index, fields for updating, fields for detail, and you can actually select what fields you want to show on all of these different types of views. So let me just show you an example. I'm going to copy paste these fields on our review, okay, and I'm going to create another one here. But instead of calling fields, I'm going to call fields for index, and I'm going to remove the ID. Okay, so when we go back to our review here and do an F5, it will use that fields for index and no longer the fields. So it will Nova detects that this method is created, and it uses it in case it exists on the resource. So just as again a quick view here on Laravel framework, Nova source, if you search for fields for index, it appears on these resolves fields, and here you do see that fields for index. So these are the methods that you can use: fields for index, fields for detail, fields for create, fields for update. Okay, so another hidden gem that you just found out. So fields for index, it's the one we are going to use to show the fields, but in a dynamic way. So I'm going to remove this, and I'm going to put it on our abstract resource. And I'm going to write now some code that in the beginning we need to write all of it, so at the end you see it working correctly. So the first thing we are going to do is we need to do everything dynamic. Means the fields, the fields filter needs to be dynamic to detect what fields exist for the current resource that is active, right? And not only that, we need to go to iterate on the fields method and detect what are the fields that we have that they actually have the property to be shown on the index. Okay, so there is a lot of things that we are going to do all together. I go step by step here so we can see how it's going to work out. So starting by the options. The options is where we put our information about what fields, and also an array or associative array with what fields we want to describe as options that you can actually check on and check. So it is in this case, it works with a label that you want to give. So again, if we have on the review, we have this review and this reviewable, right? So I could put review, and then the attribute of the field is called review, and reviewable also with the name of the relationship field reviewable, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, review, reviewable. So in this case, we also are going to put a default here, and the default is with the field attributes. So in this case, review should be true, and reviewable, I'm just going to put one true and one false so you can see the differences between it, okay? Between them, sorry. So here, review, so we are putting the options for our filter, and here the default when we load the filter, okay? And for now, nothing is going to work on the review at resource, but we are going just to see it in a moment. So here on the review, I still need to load this filter. Now I'm loading it here, but later on we're going to load it via the abstract resources just to see it working. So if I go here and I load the new fields filter, and I go back to our reviews, and on F5, I see that it says fields for index, because I forgot to remove the fields for index for now. That is. So for now, we're just affecting the filter and see how it works out. See, review true, reviewable, not true. As long as we check it, something should happen, right? But the thing is that there is no logic behind it at the moment, okay? So that's what we are going to do in a couple of steps at the same time. So first of all, the options cannot be static, right? So this is where we're going to remove this, and we are going to put a logic here that I'm going to write out and explain to you. So first thing we have, another thing you can notice is we have the request here, and we don't have requests on the default. So we need to go by different options here to, at the end, understand the fields dynamically and put them on the right active states that we want. So first of all, we need to get the resource key. So we need to get, when you're in the reviews, it's going to blow up because I just changed code. No, it didn't. So we need to get the resource key of the, that is labeled here on the path. So it says reviews, right? And here, what we do is we just put the key and we call it request resource. So again, this is things that are not totally documented, but that's why you are learning them here. So resource gives you the key, and then the next thing I'm going to do is to get the full qualified domain name of the resource. I use the static method of the Nova class called resource for key, and I pass this key. So here it receives the \app/nova/review class name. Okay, so now what we need to do is to actually create the resource instance, and for that we do a new resource and with a request. So this, at this moment, what we have on this line is that it's an instance of the resource that is being loaded on the page. Okay, and this is where we are going to start iterating the fields. So for each instance fields on our request, so we are going now to load on the review. We're going to call this method called fields that will return a collection of fields, as field, of course. We are going to say if this field that has the property show on index. So this is a property that if it's true, it can be shown on the index. Okay, we don't want to have on our options columns that cannot be shown on the index. Okay, if it like this, then what we should do is basically on our result, and in this case I should first pass a result, an empty array here, like this. So in our result, with the field name, so this is again more properties that you are now understanding. So the field object has a name. This is something, and the name is basically the label, right? And then what we want is the attribute name. So that's the real second parameter of the field that you have here, right? That normally we don't pass. Sorry, that normally we don't pass here because we affected, we call it the same. But for instance, if you have something like treated for review, you cannot leave this empty because it will use the snake case called treated for review, like this. And it's not what we want, right? We want the review. So the second parameter is the attribute, the field attribute. You will call it like this, okay? So going back here, and we go to our fields filter, we now are populating the result. And at the end, what we want to do is just to return this result. So that's what I'm going to do here, return result. And only with this code, we should see something happening in terms of our filters for these reviews. Let's do an F5, let's see what happens. So maybe it blows up. And there you go. So Nova is not instantiated. Do an F5 again, it's going to work. And there you go. See, ID, review, reviewable. Like, since this is checked because it comes from this code here, right? So for now, we'll affect that in 1 minute. So as you can see, ID, and of course, when you click, nothing happens. But at least we start to have some fields here that are dynamic. So for instance, if I now go to users, and I don't have here the field, let's call it there. So user, fields, filters, sorry. New fields filter. Like this, and we should see the fields dynamically now called name and email. Let's see. There you go. See, actually it's much more. Name, email is active orders and reviews. So all of those are fields that can appear here that are selectable for our index query that we have here, okay? So the next step that we need to do is to affect the default. But the default, we don't have this. We could use almost the same code, right? If we did have this request, and I don't know why it's not passed here, it would be great if it could. It basically we will just copy paste this and just change this line to say attribute here equals to true, right? Because we have all the fields selected at that moment. But we don't. So now we need to get a bit creative to do that. So how do we do it? I'm going to remove this return from here. And first of all, we also need to get again the resource key, right? Or that key that is here. I should call it key here. Here I call it. I'm going to call it also key. And we do an explode of the query path. So in this case, we have the request with our path. So it's the full path that we're going to give you here. And it gives you the path in a way that when we explode it, all you know is the first parameter because it actually gives just this part, resources users, not the Nova. Nova is the prefix. So when you do this, it will basically give you the key again that we need. And now we just need to create the resource instance again. But to create the resource instance, we use another method called resource instance for key, and we pass that key. Okay. In this case here, maybe I could also put directly the instance with that, but I just made here another example for you to see how it works. So resource instance for key, you pass the key, in this case it's these users, and it automatically gives you that, the instance that you need. So again, we need a result that is empty, and we do another for each. So another for each instance fields from our requests. In this case, I'm using the helper because we don't have the request that should be injected on the constructor of the default method as fields. And the logic is simple. Result if field show an index. If it can be shown, right, then result field attribute, again, the attribute that I was talking about equals to true. So as simple as this. There is a small for each, yeah, I was missing a parenthesis, sorry. So, and in this case, what we need to do is return result. So what I'm expecting now to see is all the fields now being dynamically filled and with a true, meaning marked, checked in this case. There you go, all of them completely marked, right? So if you go to the reviews again, and we click here, yeah, ID review reviewable. But again, nothing works, right? If I click on the reviewable is still here. And this is where we want to take it out. So here we go. We are very close to finish the tutorial. We're now going to pass to the last part. Now we go to the abstract resource that is being called. And we are going to start using these fields for index. And again, the code is a bit long, but bear with me because at the end the result is very nice. Public function fields for index. And I'm going to pass again the request. And again, you don't need to copy these at the same time. You're going to have access to the code base on the GitHub. So fields for index request, and then field filter. First, we need to retrieve the instance in case it exists. So we go to our request, to our filters collection, and we get the first if it exists. Function filter. And return filter instance of fields filter. So in case it exists, give it to me. And I have a small mistake here. Filter. So, and in this case, as you can see, the field filter, because it exists, it will be returned to the field filter. Okay, so key. Now we're going to get again the resource. So we can target by the fields and then turn them on and off given the field filter values. That's what I'm going to do. So request resource. I'm going to follow the same approach as on the filter. Resource equals to Nova. Resource for key. I'm not going to use the instance directly. Just doing like this the same way. Equals to new resource request. So here we have the instance of the resource at this moment. We put the fields empty. So this is where we are going now to construct the fields that should appear. Okay. And again, we do for each instance fields of our request as fields, sorry. And we are now going to populate these fields array in case the filter values is checked. And how do we do that? It's simple. If on our array, on our filter filter value, and now of course if in case the field filter is returned without any values, it gives an error. So you need also to use the ternary to make sure that at least is null. And then here we compare it with the field attribute if it's true. So if in case on our fields filter value collection, if it exists, if not, we return null. We have the field attribute marked there. And if that the value is true, then we need to add it to our collection. So fields that are here equals to field. Basically add it to the fields array. And then at the end, of course, return fields. Sorry, return fields. So as you can see, the code is very clean. Of course, you can update it to remove the fields that have relationships, but for now, for this, it's already at 18 minutes. So let's see what it says. Field service must be needed on requests. Very good. So there is a problem on the signature because these requests not passing here. I'm not passing these two. On F5 again. There we go. App clause Nova not found because I'm using Nova somewhere. There we go. just adding the namespaces on the Sublime. Okay, so reviews, let's check it out. Let's take out the ID. And it doesn't take out the ID. Let's take out the review, it doesn't take out. Nice, so it's not working as it should. Let me look again to the code very quickly. If fields filter first, instead of field filter. Okay. If fields filter value is null, as okay, if it returns a true, we should add the fields. So let me see it again, new resource. Because we are not abstract resource, public fields for index. Request resource for key, new resource request, it's correct. For each instance on the fields, request as field, very good. If array get, if we get the field filter value, okay, no, everything's fine. Let me try it again. Go into the reviews. Okay. No, it's not still working. Maybe I didn't add the fields filter namespace here on the instance of. Let me check. You make the reviews. Review. Hey, there you go. Yeah, I was forgetting the instance of. Interesting that it was not giving an error because it was not detecting that class name. So it was only coming false. So this field filter was never being filled in. So good example. So again, review. See, it's getting out. So it's the way you create the filter very nicely with dynamic columns that you can use. Hope you like it and enjoy it. One of the nice features that we have on Laravel Nova is the ability to use policies to actually control the actions that you can do on the resource. So for instance, if you want to remove the button or disable the button create user or disable the view, the edit or delete operations in major, you can use the model policy attached to your resource. In this case, for instance, we're going to do tests with this user's resource that is attached to the model user. So to do that, first thing we need to do is to actually create our policy. So PHP artisan make policy, and then I just call it user policy, and the model is user. So when you do this, Laravel automatically scaffolds your policy file, and it already adds a lot of the policy default methods that you can use not only on your Laravel projects in terms of the web projects you do, but also in terms of the Laravel Nova. For instance, ViewAny is already property that a method that it's used to access the resource in the first instance. So for instance, if we go back here and now on this version of Laravel, the policies are automatically discovered and loaded if you're following the respective naming convention, and also in this case is directly attached to the resource user. So for instance, if I do now a refresh, you'll see that there will be an error on the page, and this error is because on the ViewAny we are not returning true on this case. So if I return true, means that I can see this resource not only on the sidebar here, but I can also access it and see the information that we have on our model instances connected to the index view. So for instance, on this case, we do have the possibility to now start activating some of the functionalities or the actions we can do on the resource. For instance, the view. So if I do return true, you'll see that all the model instances that are here, now you can view them and also access the respective relationships that are connected to them. So in this case, let me just put it true everywhere very quickly. and we are going to pass to another exercise. So let's say in this case that you want to allow the logged user to only change data on his own model instance. In this case, I'm logged in with this email, so I want only to change data. I want only to have the edit active for my own. So in that case, on the update, as you know, the policy runs for each of the model instance to understand if the condition is true. Then it allows you to do that respective operation. So here all we need to do is just to return the result of a conditional. So what I'm going what I'm going to do is return user ID. So Laravel, pardon me, already injects both the user and the model that is also a user in this case, because we are talking about the user's resource. And I'm going to say that the user here should be equals to the model ID. So when my user, that is the 57, is equals to the model ID, that's also 57, I can edit the model instance in this case via this resource. So let me just see. Sorry, it needs to be like this. And if it goes well, exactly. So as you can see, only this one can be editable in this case. So this is the first let's say view on the way you can use policies. Policies are very strong because you can do anything in terms of permissions. For instance, the create user is also on the create here. So if you go to create and you do a return false, Nova hides the button create user. It's not only to hide, but also you cannot really access via the URL. So it's really a security thought on this case, and not only just hitting a button with a CSS and nothing else happens. No, you cannot create a new resource even if you go here and hard code the creation URL in this case. So given that, the next thing we are going to see is, for instance, something a bit more dynamic on this case. So let's say, for instance, that you want to not use the trash, for instance. So you want to have a policy to remove this trash that is here. So as you can see on your policy, you don't have that, right? So we're going to create here one very fast. So I'm going to do a public function, and we just need to give it a name here, whatever name you want to give it, as long as then you use it on your resource. So let's say, for instance, function view trashed. So if I can see the view trashed, okay, and all you need to do is just to pass your user again via the dependency injection that's already done by Laravel. And here I'm going just to return a false, okay, and then we're going to see on the resource how this works. Now we go to the users resource, and here before this field I'm just going to override the public static function soft deletes. So this is actually a resource static function that describes if you can use soft deletes or not, so if you can use the tree trash and all of that. So now it's very simple. If static authorizable, so you're saying if this resource is authorizable or not. Also, you do have a method public static authorizable that you can override. And if you return false, just to give an example, if you return false, no policies that it will be used on this resource. Okay, this is also very powerful if you want to inactivate resources or not. So getting back here, if static authorizable in this case, then return, and this is a normal policy check via the gate. So you do a can and then view trashed, and you pass this model in this case. In this case, it's not needed actually to pass the model. Sorry, you can just do a can view trashed. So in case I can view, in case this view trash will return true, or in this case you can just, for instance, I don't know, return, in case, for instance, if you are an admin, you can again put the if return user ID equals to something like a permission of admin, and then you just return to. But let's put it here, actually, not here, sorry, here false as it is. And here we are going to see if this works. So I'm going just to put the facade, come back here, do an F5. Don't remember if I need to, yeah, see, it disappeared, we trashed, because I'm saying that I'm checking the gate on the view trashed policy method, and then you do whatever you want here. So for instance, if now I run a true, hopefully we're going to see again the trash there. No, we're not seeing it because I think we need to pass the model itself. Sorry. In this case, exactly, sorry, we need to pass also the model on the second parameter. It's used by, this can is used by the Laravel framework, and read on the documentation. The first is the method, the second is what you want to pass on the parameter. So in this case, as you can see, the trash is here, and again you can activate it or deactivate it using this functionality that then you come here. So it's very, very important that you use it any way you want, and you can also create your own policies, so then you can control wherever you want on the resource. One of the things that can help a lot is, what if we can merge all of our UI components, for instance 2 or 3 fields, inside one single package? So instead of you having to basically you know, have to compile everything each time you change the field or 2 fields and then go to each of those folders and compile, what if you just use one single and we just compile that one and then that's it? So let's say here how we can do that. So for instance, here on my Nova components I have 2 fields, so the Nova map field and the Nova range field. For now, just forget this TextFA from the previous tutorials. So this Nova map field and this Nova range field is already being used here on the user. So if I go here and I do an edit, you see that we have 2 different colors that I placed here. So for the Nova map field, and again the objective is not to actually work on the field itself, but it's just to show the differences, because later on we're going to confirm that. So here it is, for the Nova map we have a red, and for the range we do have green. Okay, so those are the 2 fields that I'm using, and if you go here to the app Nova, to the user, you'll see that I have here Nova map field and Nova range field. Okay, so here what we are going to do is to merge these 2 fields into one somehow, and this is completely non-edited video, so let's do it straight on together. And for that, first of all, I need to create something. I need to actually create the new folder for the field. So I'm just going to create here a called, well, actually I can just duplicate one of these. So it's going to duplicate the node model. So I'm going to pause the video just for 1 minute and then get back. Almost there. Okay, it's getting really close. My laptop is with CPU very high. Might hear the fan a bit. It will calm down in a few seconds. And here we go. So now I'm going to call it Nova Fields, and inside we are now going to have some things to change here. Let's first see what does Nova do to your composer.json. So your composer.json, it has here your library, the new ones, and here also on as a package. And also in the package.json, it creates some builds things that you can see here automatically. So when you run the npm run, for instance, build Nova range field, it enters into the correct Nova component and then runs, compiles your assets without compression. So you can see what's going on there. And this is where we're going to change a lot of things here. So let's start by the composer. And here I don't want to have these 2, I just want to have one called Nova Fields, right? So that was, if I'm not mistaken, Nova Fields. Now we're going to also call here Nova Fields. Remove this one. Okay, and for now that's it here. Now on the Nova fields, let's do some work. First of all, let's delete everything here so we can see it working later on. Delete and delete. And on the resources, we are going to create two folders, one for the Nova map field and another one for the Nova ranged field. Okay, and we are going to copy things inside, so let me just delete here this one too. First, I'm just categorizing things. Okay, on the source, we already have the Nova range field here, so we just need to create the other one called Nova map field, and we just need to copy paste information here and change later on. So Nova map field, Bruno Nova fields, and this one to Nova fields, because we are in a new namespace, right? And here where it says range fields to the Nova fields too, and as you can see here, it loads something, but we're going to change this in a minute. So let's continue here. So Nova fields, it's the new one that we have. We now have this field service provider also called Nova fields. So everything is on the correct namespace. We now have the two categorizations here, and here we're also going to change to Nova fields, my grouped fields, wherever. It's up to you, right? And our package JSON, for now we don't change anything here. Let's see if it works after all. And Webpack, we are not going to change something here too for now. So what do we need now? We need the resources. So let me go here to the resources, reveal for the map fields, right? We're going to put it there. There you go. And for the range fields, reveal, we're going to copy there too. So things are getting better. So we now have one package called Nova fields with an empty dist folder, with the resources, the Nova map field, the Nova range field, and also the classes here. So let me just now go to my Webpack. And before actually going to the Webpack, let me just change again the thing here in the composer.json, Nova fields. I already did, sorry. So let's do composer update and see where we go. Composer update, so you can redo everything again. Okay, it's running. Let's see if it doesn't give an error. It should remove those two libraries from the previous two packages, from the two UI components, remember, and should add the new Nova fields and run the service provider. Let's see if it goes till the end. Almost there. Okay, there you go. So it removed the range field and the map field and added the Nova fields, and it also bootstrapped it. It was discovered. So all going okay in terms of the fields. What is not still going okay is how do we compile the access correctly. So we need the field.js that I forgot to copy. So reveal this field.js from the Nova map field. Reveal field.js and the range field. Reveal field.js, JS, as you prefer, just putting it here. So there you go. So now this ranged field, it's compiling inside these components, right? So looks like I made a small mistake. Looks like we need the folder called components, right? So let me see here again, resources, JS, components. No, I didn't do this. I just copied to the wrong place. Sorry. Delete. So this, it's already there. So yeah. So sorry for that. Delete. There you go. So I made a mistake. No, components. Yeah, I made a mistake. Nice, Bruno. So here on the map field, on the GS, there's the components, and I missed on the map field. I deleted the file. Sorry for that. So I'm just going to copy it again. Yeah, we need to pay attention when you are doing this, okay? Because a mistake here, then sometimes when it gives errors, we don't know where it should touch and where it should debug it. So here we go. So we are just replicating the same structure: resources.js components, and then the field. So resources.js components, the field, and now point to the right one here for the Nova map field, JS components, and here for the range field. So all good, all going very well. Now we just have the final thing to do, that is to actually compile the assets correctly. And for that, we need to go to our Webpack, and let's do first a test for the resources. So first of all, let me go here, sorry, Nova components, to our Nova fields, and I'm just going to do an npm update to see if everything at least works well in terms of npm. Very good. Now, if I run an npm run dev, as you can see, everything is going to be screwed up, right? Because I have these resources that is here from the previous one, but not from the new one. So, and also on the dist, I don't want to put it only on the GS, but I want to actually put it on the right place. So I'm going to call it Nova map field /GS, for instance. Let's first start by the Nova map field. Okay, so in our resources, we then have the Nova map field /GS/field. Okay, and here the same resources. In case you are using style sheets, I'm not using in this case, but still it also goes to that. So let's run now an npm run dev just to see if it works and if it creates something on the dist file here. Okay, so it's starting to process. Normally it's here, it becomes a sensitive part. Bingo, done. So our dist now have the Nova map field with the CSS and the JS file. Okay, not compressed because it's not a production asset compilation. Now let's go to the other one. So how do we do this? Well, simple. We just go here and duplicate the lines, and we put the ranged field, and it's still not over after this, but we are very close. Ranged field. Okay, so now we compiled one to the Nova map field and another one to the ranged field. So let me run it again. And it should work well, hopefully. There we go. So now I have the Nova map field and ranged field for both. So if you now go to my dist, you now have both of those. See? Pretty awesome. But the last step, it's a simple one, is actually to go to the field service provider and load things on the right places. So as you can see, we have the Nova ranged field from that component, and then we're going to have the map field. And this is pretty straightforward. Instead of loading only from the distribution folder, we then just need to prefix it with the Nova ranged field, and the same for the style sheet. And here we just prefix it with a map. There we go. So now everything is working fine, I guess. Now let's see back here to see if what happens. It should be the same. Yeah, of course we don't have this class name, right? So if I go back here to my Nova, to my user, I cannot load the ones from that class namespace, right? So I'm just going to remove them from here, because they are no longer on these namespaces, right? Actually, I can just change it here, Nova fields and Nova fields. Here we go. It should appear green and red again, but now precompiled from that library that we just created. Now the last step, because this tour is already going a bit longer, sorry for that, it's just to actually remove these two. So I'm going to reveal here. I'm going to keep the Nova fields, and I'm going to remove these two here. Just give it a moment. I'm just going to pause the video because it's a very long one. Maybe not. Yeah, I'm just going to pause for 2 seconds. Still deleting. Almost there. One folder already went out. The other one is just going now. 9, 8, 3, 2. Okay, here we go. So now, no folders, just the Nova fields. We do an F5 and everything should work fine. Here we go. Hope you enjoyed. See you on the next tutorial.